Assalamu alaikum. Why is the number of people very low today? Is still people coming? Okay. So, how's the anatomy of the nervous system going? Hard? Yeah, I saw yesterday you had first lesson of anatomy of brain and spinal cord. Yes? No? No? Only brain. Only brain. Okay. So, how does it feel? It's a strange part of body. You cannot see, you cannot feel. It's very confusing. The names are very confusing, right? Lot of names, yes, and lot of difficult and how to say different names. So, can any one of you identify which part is this? What is this? Cerebellum. Oh, you know it. Wow. And so this is all cerebrum. Cerebrum. Okay. Cerebral cortex. Right. Cerebrum. And it has further divisions. Do you know what are those divisions? Lobes. Yeah. Central sulcus. Yeah. Okay. Can anyone name the lobes of cerebral cortex or cerebrum? Yeah. Frontal lobe and yes, parietal lobe. Sorry. Temporal. Yes. Parietal, temporal, and which one? Yeah, this one is not parietal. This is occipital. Yeah, on the back. Occipital. Good, good, good. I'm happy that you are familiar with some of the terminology, because we're going to say lots of difficult names today, and especially when you have to associate functions with those difficult names also, because anatomy is like only telling difficult names, but now we need to also to understand what do they do actually, those difficult names. Okay. And I think again, like as I said in the homeostasis lecture, that when you look at the physiology of human systems, it's really amazing at how fine it is, how immaculate it is, and then you try to understand. And right now at this stage, we do not usually tell you what we don't know still, okay, because we're just touching the surface. Okay, we're just knowing what is really certain about things. Okay, so we're only talking about brain that controls everything. Okay, for example, we're only talking about memories, we're only talking about global function of brain. Okay, but there are so many things that we don't know. Okay, and they're still going on, the research is still going on, and people are still working. Like last week or something, there was a research that says even the somatic cells, the cells outside the brain, they can retain memories. Okay, like previously we think that only brain can retain memories, but this one, somatic cells can also retain memories, and we're like really excited about it, because we don't know what memories are, and we don't know a lot about stuff. Okay, we don't know what is schizophrenia, we don't know what is depression, we don't know what is epilepsy. Many of the brain disorders, either we don't know or we know but we cannot use that knowledge to cure it. Okay, so we're still doing those stuff. Okay, and it's interesting, it's challenging, it's interesting, and you're it's fascinating, honestly, the brain part. Okay, so I hope the people who are late, they can join us. So today we're going to talk about cerebral cortex and a little bit of different areas of brain, because we have only one lecture on cerebral cortex, so I just added some additional stuff, just some introduction. Okay, sensory and motor aspects. Sorry. Okay, so here's the functional anatomy. The functional anatomy means anatomy with respect to the functions. Okay, so your brain is globally divided into cerebral cortex and the things which are under that cover, because cerebral cortex is the whole, big thing that covers the whole brain. But inside there are lots of stuff, lots of smaller structures, and cerebral cortex or cerebrum is divided into two pieces. Each one is called a cerebral hemisphere. Sphere is like a round thing, okay, and hemisphere is the half of that round thing. Okay, so hemisphere or cerebrum, and it is further divided into lobes: parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and frontal lobe. So this is cerebrum, and it has got a walnut-like appearance, okay, convoluted with sulci and gyri, okay, lots of sulci and gyri to increase the surface area. Okay, so the purpose of those infolding and outfolding and all the curves is to increase the surface area and increase the number of neurons inside the brain. Okay, so apart from cortex, there are diencephalon or cephalon, whatever you want to call, brainstem, and the cerebellum, and basal nuclei, and lots of tracts and fibers and stuff like that. Okay, so how many neurons are there in the brain? Any ideas? How many neurons? 200,000? 300,000? Okay. Yeah, just give a rough idea. 10,000? That's a lot. Almost like nobody is sure about it. Nobody's gone and counted stuff in person, but on roughly it's like around 80 billion neurons. Okay, 80 billion neurons, and they are connected to each other. Okay, they're connected to each other, and they're connected it so profusely and so extensively that it's like really hard to get to that point where like 80 billion neurons making so many connections, and then model it in an artificial thing like that. It's just not done yet. Okay, so one neuron makes like hundreds of connections at the very least, or maybe times more than hundreds, thousand. So you can imagine how much connections are there. Okay, how many connections are there? Right. So cerebral cortex. So when we take a section of the brain from half and look at the other half of the side, so this is cerebral hemisphere, and this part is called cerebral cortex, and then there are deeper structures, and then there's something called corpus callosum. Okay, corpus callosum is the one that connects the two hemispheres on the right side and left side. The hemispheres are separate, but they are only connected by corpus callosum. We'll talk about it. So cerebral cortex is above the cerebellum and brainstem. It's two hemispheres, and it does all the voluntary stuff. Okay, most of the voluntary stuff that you do is volunteered or controlled by the neurons, or processed by the neurons inside cerebral cortex. For example, speech, memory, logical and emotional responses. Okay, logical and emotional responses. Consciousness, interpretation of sensation. You feel something, you see something, you hear something that is interpreted in cerebral cortex. And voluntary movements are all functions of cerebral cortex. Okay, voluntary movements, that you initiate a movement in response to a stimulus. You hear something and then you talk, or you respond to that. This is voluntary output. Okay, and all the higher mental functions. Higher mental functions are something like they are the function of cerebral cortex, and these are the things which are, although they are present in animals, but not to that degree. Okay, not to that degree, like thinking, learning, reasoning, remembering, feeling, or moving muscles purposefully. Okay, so these are higher mental functions, which are the function of cerebral cortex. So if we go into a little bit of detail, okay, a little bit of detail. So we have frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobe. Now frontal lobe controls voluntary movements, personality, problem solving, and planning. Okay. Now we do need to have a look at different parts and their specific functions, because sometimes you have a patient who has got a problem with in one of the functions, one of the executive functions. Okay, and you need to pinpoint which part of the brain is injured, okay, or malfunctioning. You understand? So frontal lobe is with personality, problem solving, and planning. Okay, and this part is interesting because it's also called neocortex, because it controls the behavior, and behavior has one of the most important things, which is called inhibitory pathways, inhibitory behavior. Okay, you want to do something which is, a little bit sort of silly or dangerous or risk taking, and then you feel like your brain tells you not to do it, like it's too dangerous, it's unpurposeful. Okay, and it develops very late in human life. For example, you are all of you, you're like 18, 19, around that age, and it's still developing. Okay, like in 15, 16, 17, people are engaged in risk taking behaviors. Okay, for example, bike racing, or exploring different things, or doing something really which doesn't make sense to an older person. Okay, it's risky, but that's because they do not have that inhibitory pathways developed. Okay, so their actions are a little bit uninhibited, disinhibited. Their frontal lobe is still developing. Your frontal lobe is also still developing, and its injury can result in changes in behavior. Impulsivity means you want to do something and you suddenly just do it without giving it a thought. And difficulty in problem solving. Then is the parietal lobe that processes like touch, temperature, pain, and then damage may cause loss of sensation. Temporal lobe is hearing, memory, and understanding language. Understanding language is one of the very significant things. So there can be problems, can cause auditory hallucinations and memory loss, or not able to produce speech. And occipital lobe is for processing visual information. The visual cortex where all that you see is processed is behind. So what you see, the information travels all the way inside the brain to the cortex, visual cortex at the back, and that's where it is processed initially. Okay, so yeah.
When does the frontal complete developing? At which age?
Well, it varies, but like 21, 22 years, yeah, it's finally developed. And it's called neocortex because in evolution it came very late. Okay, it came very late, so it's also called neocortex. Now, inside the brain, there are two distinct areas that we need to know: gray area and white area, gray matter and white matter. So gray matter is the neuronal cell bodies here at the top. Okay, cell bodies, dendrite synapses, they process information. Okay, and white matter is the axons, like here the axons come down and go in there. Okay, gray area is the neuronal cell bodies, white matter is the axons, and they transmit information. So that's what they say. Gray matter and white matter is that gray matter processes information while the white matter transmits information. Okay, so gray matter and white matter. These are two distinct parts. Now, here's the central sulcus. Okay, so from central sulcus, we have identified over time with research and with findings of people who had problems. Like in ancient times, if someone, person A or B is working as a doctor and they have a patient, they will follow that patient for the life, and the patient had certain symptoms, and the patient dies, they get their brain and look at it, what area was having a problem. Okay, so that's how they understood the motor areas and the sensory areas. Okay, so the central sulcus divides the brain into also lobes, but also into primary motor area and primary sensory area. Okay, so this is primary somatosensory area behind, and this is primary motor area in front of the central sulcus. Okay, primary somatosensory area or primary sensory area and primary motor area. Primary, the first one, okay, that has got the control. So now primary sensory area means every information, every sensation which is coming from the environment, okay, it is coming to primary sensory area, and primary sensory area is processing all that information. Okay, it's processing all that information, and then it gives the message after processing to the primary motor area to initiate a necessary movement. Okay, initiate necessary movement. So this is primary motor area, and this is primary sensory area. So it's a parietal lobe posterior central sulcus. Impulses traveling from body, they go into this area of the brain, except for special senses like visual signals. So visual signals go to occipital cortex, in the visual cortex. But apart from special senses, all the sensations go. So it allows you to recognize pain, different temperature, or light touch. Whatever sensation is coming, your primary sensory area is the place where it is processed. Okay, it is processed, identified. When you become aware of something, okay, when you become aware of something, this is the area that processes it. Okay, it is even possible to feel a sensation and not being aware of it. Okay, like you might have heard of sleepwalking. Have you heard of sleepwalking? People who walk in sleep and they never trip over things. Okay, they never trip over things. They're walking perfectly all right, but they're not aware of it. Why? Because during sleep, the awareness area is inhibited, but the sleep, but the sensation area is still working. Okay, so they are not consciously aware, but everything else is working. Okay, and similarly, the motor area, and the funny thing is that when you dream, and sometime in your nightmares, there's a monster behind you, a big animal or snake or megalodon, and you're running from it, and you cannot run fast enough to escape. Have you ever experienced anything? Yeah, so that's the reason. The reason is that your motor area is inhibited during sleep. Okay, so you're sleeping, your body is not moving, your motor area is totally inhibited.
Only the sensory area is working.
Yeah, only the sensory, unless you are sleepwalking. But usually during dreams, yeah. Yeah, so that's like if I mean sometimes a sensation can be so much that that motor area is uninhibited. The signals are so strong, or you suddenly wake up and you're like breathing very shallow, and you're feeling like sometimes you have seen people scared to they wake up from the nightmares. So that's when it becomes too much to handle. But we are generally talking about your motor area is totally inhibited, so you're sleeping, but rest of the brain is totally working fine. Okay. So the interesting thing is, now primary motor area is similarly the dorsal portion of frontal lobe, and this allows you to consciously move our skeletal muscles. Okay, consciously, as I said, cerebral cortex is the conscious or purposeful things. Axons, they go to motor tract and go to body and then rest of the place. So this is motor area, and then this is premotor area, and then the other areas we're going to talk about it. Okay, you understand primary motor area and primary sensory area. Now with these areas, as you have seen here, there are some other areas that they're called anterior association areas. Okay, problem solving, language comprehension, Broca's, posterior association areas, and visual area and auditory area. And along with these, there are association area. Association area is like you have a primary area, and then you have an additional number of neurons that you can employ to process a stimulus. Okay, so for example, there's something called like the famous brain exercise is like you're walking in a forest. Okay, and there's some movement in the grass. Okay, now that's a stimulus. You have seen it, you have heard it, but you need to process it. Okay, so maybe that primary sensory area is not able to process it, so it has got an association area. Okay, so primary somatic and secondary somatic area, so like more neurons that help in additional processing of a stimulus. Okay, so basic processing of stimulus and then additional processing of stimulus. Or for example, primary visual area and secondary visual area. Now secondary visual area is like you have seen something, but you need to put it in a context like with hearing or with memories or with emotions or with recalling things, recalling experience, like what I'm seeing, what does it mean? Okay, what I'm seeing is like something, this table, but what does this table mean? Okay, this table has a purpose, this table has a shape, has a function, has a place where it is, somebody has brought it. So those are the things that come from experience. So these are association areas: primary visual area, association area, primary auditory area for hearing, secondary auditory area or association area, similarly prefrontal association area, primary motor area, supplemental and premotor area, primary somatic area, and second. So additional processing is done in the association areas. So all association areas, okay, they are, for example, speech area. Now speech area is interesting because it has got something really amazing.
I didn't understand
The
the association function.
association function is the secondary processing. For example, what I said is, if for example first day I came here, I saw this table, and now whenever I see this, I recognize it. Or if I see a similar table in another place, that will bring up memories of like this lecture hall. Okay, so this is primary thing is that I see this wooden table, and the secondary processing is further emotional aspect, memory aspect, or it's like how was the surface, did I touch it, did I get hurt with it, with the corner, something like that. Secondary processing. So that is the association areas. Now in order to understand how much part of cortex is dedicated to what function, okay, how much part of the cortex is dedicated to what specific function, there's a hypothetical map created to understand that. Okay, and that's called a homunculus. Homunculus means a small man, or something like that. I don't know the actual language origin of this. Okay, sensory homunculus and motor homunculus together they are called homunculi. Okay, homunculus, homunculi, singular and plural. So sensory homunculus is the sensory cortex. Okay, now what happens is that this much area of the sensory cortex is dedicated to hand and fingers. Okay, so it's just there's, if you open up someone's brain, there's no arbitrary homunculus like this, there's no nothing like that inside the brain. Okay, it's just hypothetical, arbitrary. Okay, it's just to understand how much. Now for example, this is hand. Now hand has got so much sensation, so much development of sensation, and there's so many functions that it can perform, that the area given to hand on both on motor side and on sensory side is huge. Okay, and then area given to face, for lips, face, nose, eyes, teeth, gums, jaw, tongue, pharynx, intra-abdominal very small, there's hardly any sensation coming. And similarly on the motor side, foot, knee, hip, trunk, shoulder, like you don't have any motor functions to do, but with the fingers and with the hands you have so many functions, like you can perform surgery, you can thread a needle, you can drive, you can drink, eat, do so many gestures with your hands. So hand has got big sensory area, big motor area, big skills, and then the face where you can show so many emotions, you can talk, you can make gestures, you can show anger, happiness, everything, and swallowing and everything. So this is a sensory homunculus and a motor, and I wanted to give an example of its arbitrariness just to explain that it's hypothetical. So this is a map of France of population density, okay, population density, and this is Paris. Now Paris has got an Eiffel Tower, but this is not Eiffel Tower, okay. This is the population density, how many people live per kilometer, okay. So this area, Ile-de-France, has got most number of people. It's a very, very densely populated area, and that's why this is a graph of population density, okay. It's not Eiffel Tower. This is a hypothetical graph. Even if Eiffel Tower was here in Toulouse, this place would still be high. You understand the hypothetical thing, okay. So similar is the homunculus. Now the motor homunculus, now most of the neurons in the primary motor area control the body areas, and the first motor control, finest motor control, face, mouth, hands, the body map on the motor cortex is called the motor homunculus, okay. So on motor side, again the same thing. These are the areas, these are dedicated to that motor area, to control of that area in the body, okay. So hand has got a big place, face has got big place, tongue, and the trunk has got not much of motor function. You cannot do any surgery with your trunk, okay. So sensory pathways, another important thing to understand is sensory pathways are crossed. When the sensory pathway from rest of the body it's coming, the sensation, it usually crosses from left to right and right to left. So meaning that the left side of the primary somatosensory area receives impulses from right side of the body, and vice versa. Impulses from the special senses organs are interpreted in other cortex. Special senses have got like special, okay, they don't come, but general sensations are there. Now speech area is a good example. Speech area is a good example to understand how does primary areas and association areas work. So there are two speech areas, two parts of speech areas. One is Broca's area and one is Wernicke's area. Now Broca's area is also called speech production area. It was a scientist, his name was Broca, who identified it, who had a patient or like few patients who could not speak, okay. They understood things but they could not speak. So he was following them, and after some time he found one of patient's brain, and then he found out that okay, this particular area was damaged. There was a stroke, there was a ischemia, or there was an injury to that area, and that's how it ended up, okay. So his name was they put it like Broca's area. Broca, first it was like this is speech area, but then another guy came and he was like, no, there's another area where people can produce speech but it doesn't make any sense, okay. So this area is called Wernicke's area. Now this is an example the guy quoted in one of his research papers, that there's a guy who has got problem in Wernicke's area, okay. Wernicke's area is speech processing area, okay, speech comprehension area. What I'm talking is it making sense to you, okay, is the Wernicke's area. And if it is making sense to you, only then you can produce a sensible response, okay. If I ask you a question, okay, if I ask you a question, you can only answer the question if you understand the question, right? So first, whatever you feel, whatever you listen, it is processed by speech comprehension area or speech processing area, and then a message is conveyed to Broca's area, and Broca's area is what produces a meaningful speech in response, okay. So the guy whose name was Wernicke, he came up with a patient and his details that, okay, this patient can produce fluent speech without any meaning. Okay, and this is what he said. Is this some of the work that we work as we did before? All right. From when, why I'm here, what's wrong with me, because I was myself until the Tines took something about the time between me and my regular time in the time, and they took the time in that time, and here's that one, things like that. It is speech. He's saying words that one can understand, one can listen, but they do not make any sense. Okay, why? Because his speech production area is good, he can produce speech, but he cannot understand what is being asked. Okay, and what it's the meaning is lost. Okay, so Wernicke's area and Broca's area, they are speech product, and then they are connected with something called an arcuate fasciculus. Okay, arcuate fasciculus is a band, a group of neurons that connects speech comprehension area with speech production area. Okay, so you understand, you hear something, you understand what is being said, and that message of understanding or interpretation or processing is conveyed to speech production area via arcuate fasciculus. Okay, so arcuate fasciculus connects the two speech area. From one speech area you understand, the other speech area you produce speech, or you produce a meaningful response. Okay, so okay, and then there are other connections of speech area. For example, primary visual cortex goes to speech area, motor it goes to primary auditory cortex, it gives input to production speech comprehension area, because what you're hearing should make sense in time and place. Okay, what you're hearing is like, if you're sitting in for example, aeroplane, you're going on vacation after completing a very difficult first year of nursing and listening to so many things, and suddenly in the aeroplane you listen to an announcement, and the announcement is, hi, my name is Dr. Khalid, I'm here for your physiology lecture, and you're like, no, this doesn't make sense, like I just finished my year, like this guy is just following me in the aeroplane. So you need other things to give input to make it meaningful. Okay, so this lecture is only meaningful if it's here in the lecture, it's not going to go in behind you in the aeroplane. Okay, so primary visual cortex and primary auditory cortex, they also give input, okay, to speech comprehension area, and then it goes to speech production area, and then to motor cortex also. Okay, speech production area and motor cortex, because motor cortex is what voluntarily controls all skeletal muscles. Okay, and speech production is an act of skeletal muscle movement. Okay, speech production, I move my skeletal muscles, that's how I speak. You understand? It's interesting, right? So someone has got, like in Guyton, there's a picture, not in Guyton, maybe in pathology book, a person who had a massive stroke inside the brain, and their Wernicke's area, arcuate fasciculus, and Broca's area, it's all destroyed, all dead. Okay, so neither they can understand speech nor they can produce speech. So that happens when someone has got a stroke or has got an injury. Similarly, there was one guy, a very interesting case in the history of medicine. His name was Phineas Gage. Okay, I forgot to put his picture. I think I should have put a picture. Phineas Gage was a guy, he was a railroad worker. Okay, very interesting story. He was working on a mountain. They were putting a train track. Okay, and they blasted some mountain area, and with the blast there was an iron rod, a very long iron rod. It's still in the museum in Harvard, I guess. So that iron rod came and hit him in the face from here and destroyed his eye and went into his frontal lobe. Okay, went into his frontal lobe. The guy survived. Okay, they took it back, they took it out, and the guy survived. He was alive after that. But what happened is his personality changed. Okay, totally. He was a very nice person, Phineas Gage, But everyone who remembered him as a very nice person, they were like, he's not himself. He's not the same Fini Gage we knew him before. Okay, so he became impulsive. He became angry on small things, and fighting and being rough with people, and disinhibited, not socially acceptable behavior. Okay, unacceptable behavior. Yeah. So that's how people came to know that, okay, when he died, the people looked at his brain and were like, the frontal lobe was destroyed, and that's how you come to know that, okay, this frontal lobe has got some relationship with the personality. Okay, that's how psychology and medicine, it because before people believed that like psychology or personality has nothing to do with the anatomy or physiology. Okay, it's something different. Okay, but then they were like, okay, the anatomical destruction of one part of the brain leads to a psychological change, a personality change in a person. Okay, and then similarly, there's a very famous case of Henry Molaison, one of the patients. Henry Molaison is called the most studied patient in human history. Okay, so he had got epilepsy, and somebody operated upon him, and they took out his hippocampus. Okay, and after they took out his hippocampus, you know about hippocampus, right? Ah, okay, I'm sorry. So maybe in next lecture. Okay. But we have only one lecture on this. Like next lecture is autonomic nervous system. Okay, I will try to put it somewhere. Like I will give you a reference of a book that you need to read. Okay, apart from your textbooks, also read like the other non-fiction stuff. So the book name is Patient HM. HM is Henry Molaison, and he is one of the most studied patients in human history. And almost all we know about memory and the neurobiology of memory comes from that patient. Very, very interesting case. You have to read it in your summer. Okay, promise? I will send you the link or the PDF maybe, if you don't want to buy the hard copy. Okay, back to speech areas. Broca's area, Wernicke's area, and arcuate fasciculus. Now we have to quick. So like arcuate fasciculus that connects two areas, there are so many things, tracts inside brain that connect one area to another area. Okay, that connect one area. Now type of these is the association fiber tracts that connects areas within a hemisphere. Okay, that like one visual area and visual association area. So there's a tract, a group of neurons that takes the information. They're called association tract. Projection fiber tract that connect the cerebrum with lower CNS centers as the brain stem. So below the cerebrum there is a brain stem, and so those neurons are called projection fibers. Here I guess these are projection fibers. Okay, so the projection fibers, they connect the upper part of brain with the lower part of brain stem. Then commissural fiber tracts, they cross the cerebral midline to connect cortical and subcortical region of the two hemispheres. Commissural fibers, and the biggest one and the most famous one is the corpus callosum, already talked about. Now this is corpus callosum. Okay, commissural fibers, corpus callosum, and it connects one cerebral hemisphere with the other cerebral hemisphere. Okay, now generally speaking, left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, they're the same, right? Premotor area on the left side, sensory area, association areas, frontal lobe, right and left, they're all the same. But there are some catches. Okay, there are some catches where you need to connect the brain. Otherwise, like there's something in the left side of the brain that is not present in the right side of the brain. Okay, and if there is no connection, then the information will not travel between them. Okay, so corpus callosum is the connection between left and right side, and it's big, like it's really most important one. Apart from that, homotopic fibers, they are also commissural fibers. They interconnect corresponding cortical or subcortical regions in the two hemisphere. Okay, like right and left. Okay, two places, they are also called homotopic. Homotopic means the same thing on the right, same thing on the left. They are connecting them. So corpus callosum is the most important because it's big, large fiber tract that connects the cerebral hemisphere, arches over the brainstem and this, and some of the cortical function areas are only in one hemisphere. Okay. Now, what are those areas? If you have to do a surgery, for example, okay, for example, there's a patient who has got epilepsy. You know epilepsy, seizures. I don't know, like patient become unconscious and their body is moving like that, and they're vomiting, and after some time they come back. Okay, that's called epilepsy. I don't know if it's in Arabic. What is it called in Arabic? Madri. Okay. Ah, thank God I know what Madri means. Like otherwise I was like, Madri is the name of epilepsy. Okay, anyone who knows what's we call epilepsy in Arabic? Don't translate. Don't ask GPT. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Sorry. Okay. Even more difficult to understand. I think Madri is right. Okay. So if the epilepsy is on one side, okay, epilepsy is the like electrical discharge of so many neurons together without any stimulus. Okay, so like 500,000 neurons, they start discharging at the same time inside the brain. Okay, some uncontrolled electrical activity, and the neurons, they are concerned with right hand or right leg, and right hand or right leg is like jerking unpurposefully. Okay, there's no purpose, and the person become unconscious because of all the electricity in the brain. Now, if that epilepsy is on one side of the brain and the brain is connected to the other side, that will spread to the other side also. Okay, like action potential spreads from one place to other. So in cases of severe refractory epilepsy, refractory, remember I told you refractory period in action potential. Refractory means that does not respond to a stimulus. Okay, so refractory epilepsy is that does not respond to medication. You have to perform a corpus callosotomy. Okay, you have to cut the corpus callosum, and that leads to split brain syndrome. Now, split brain syndrome, what does it mean? You have a visual field. Okay, you have a visual field like this. Okay, a joint visual field, because both of the eyes, they see like one thing, but you can divide the visual field by putting a thing in your front like this. Okay, so or close one eye. Okay, one is right visual field, one is left visual field. So when there is a disconnection between two brain, and you present an object to a person on the right side or the left visual side, which is processed by the right side of the brain, patient may be unable to verbally identify it. Okay, as the right hemisphere lacks direct access to left hemisphere's language center. Now, the thing is, the language center, okay, the Wernicke's area and the Broca's area are only in the left side. Okay, Wernicke's area and the Broca's area, the speech is only on the left side. So if you present something to a person on the left visual field, for example, this laser pointer on the left side, and right side or is closed. Okay, so this is processed in the right side of the brain, because all sensory pathways, they usually change side. Okay, they go from left side to right side. Okay, now right side has lost its connection with the left side. Okay, because the corpus callosum was cut off due to the spread of electricity or the epilepsy. Now, even if I know what is it, I cannot produce a verbal response to tell what is it. Okay, so my language production area is on the other side. So the corpus callosum or the other fibers, they are very necessary for coordination of brain function. Okay, so the person would not be able to tell what is it. Maybe they know it, but suddenly you bring it to the other visual field, and then the person knows. Okay,
But you use the right hand side, the brain would be active, so the right hand side would be less active.
yes, there are things which are present in both sides of the hemisphere. Those will be intact, but there is a problem in coordination between those two. Okay, but sensory area is also on the right, and the right and left, and motor area is also right and left. They're the same, but language areas are also only in the left. Okay, So language production is specific in those cases. Okay, in a split brain syndrome, the problem is that if you do something now, God forbid, the person has lost their right eye, okay, or their bright visual field for some reason, okay, then they can have a real problem. Okay, then this is the cerebral cortex, and below this there are thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. Okay, these three structures, they are called diencephalon or diencephalon, whatever you want to call it. There are different people who call it differently. Okay, now thalamus is a relay station for sensory impulses. Okay, whatever impulses are coming from the body, it first goes to thalamus. Here, this is thalamus. Okay, and initial interpretation of stimulus is at the thalamus level, and then it goes up to the primary sensory area. Okay, so it's called diencephalon or diencephalon. Okay, thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus, they have got a bunch of functions, and hypothalamus is something really famous for a thing called HPA axis. Okay, HPA axis is very significant. It's called the stress axis, hypothalamo adrenal hypothalamo adrenal cortical axis. Okay, HPA axis, hypothalamo cortical adrenal axis. Yeah, like we didn't go into details. Okay, it's the same area. Okay, so when you are stressed about something, okay, the stress hormones are released from hypothalamo to pituitary, and pituitary to adrenal. Adrenal glands are on the kidneys. On top of kidneys there are adrenal glands. Okay, they produce cortisol, which is stress hormone. Okay, so if you are stressed, your before your brain consciously knows about it, you give a response to a stress which is like sort of unconscious or a subconscious. Okay, that's called HP axis. But like that's the detail. No, we cannot go into detail of everything. Apart from that, there is one thing called basal nuclei. Okay, basal nuclei are a groups of neurons. Okay, here in this part of the brain, they are islands of gray matter deep within the white matter of cerebral hemisphere, and they regulate voluntary motor activities by modifying instructions. Now, as sensory stimuli come to hypothalamus, then go to higher areas, motor instructions for making a response or making skeletal muscle movement, they first come to basal nuclei, and basal nuclei then pass them on to skeletal muscles. Okay, basal nuclei, they pass them on to skeletal muscles, and in relation to starting or stopping a movement before they send it to skeletal muscles by the primary motor cortex. So sensory input first goes to diencephalon or thalamus, and then goes to sensory area, and motor output, whatever brain is telling the body, it goes to basal nuclei, and then it goes down to the skeletal muscles. So basal nuclei are like substantia nigra is one of the basal nucleus, and in brain degenerative diseases, when substantia nigra or basal nuclei, they are not working properly, they degenerate, the movement is becomes difficult, discoordinated. Okay, it's like jerky movements or unpurposeful movements, sometimes moving someone's hands like without any purpose, or like difficulty in coordination of movement. So basal nuclei for the motor processing, from motor cortex to basal nuclei, and then on to skeletal muscles, and thalamus for sensory pre-processing. It's called pre-processing. And then I guess this is the last slide. Then we have got brain stem, which is the place that coordinates so much of stuff without our conscious control. Okay, so cerebral cortex, sensory areas, motor areas, everything, personality, most of it is in our conscious control. Okay, we can make movements consciously, but midbrain, pons and medulla, they have reflexes, and reflexes are the motor control without conscious effort. Okay, like breathing is something which is motor. Okay, you move your skeletal muscles to coordinate breathing, you understand, but you're not consciously doing it. You don't have to remember to breathe, you're just doing it unconsciously. Okay, if you have to remember to breathe, then maybe you forget to breathe, especially new generation, because they forget to do everything. But coordination of movement and connect of information from higher center of brain without conscious control. Okay, respiration, cranial nerve nuclei, autonomic functions. Autonomic function we're going to study in the next lecture, autonomic nervous system. But reflexes, respiration, motor control, arousal, this is the area of the brainstem. So this is the brainstem. If you remove cerebrum, this area is left, which is called midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Okay. And one more thing which makes the brain even more complicated is the reticular formation. Now, reticular formation is a diffuse mass of gray matter that extends the whole length of the brain and the nervous system. Okay, so for example, visual impulses, they are coming. Okay, sending general sensory pathways, auditory impulses, they are coming, and then there's a reticular formation which radiates to the whole cerebral cortex. Okay, now how do we coordinate so much stuff? Okay, how do we coordinate so much stuff that, you remember that last time in skeletal muscles, I guess we talked about there's a goalkeeper standing in a football pitch. Okay, and in a fraction of second they leap into the air on the right side, on the left side, wherever the ball was coming, and they stop the ball. Okay, they stop the goal. Okay, now the goalkeeper is only looking at they're using the visual information, they're only looking at the ball. Okay, but wherever the ball is going, that information is being processed so extensively that the motor system coordinates with it, and literally in a fraction of a second, that guy jumps into the air and stops the ball on right side or left side or down or up or in the corner or wherever it is. Okay, so that is the coordination, and coordination is because of extensive networking. It's one of the thing is called reticular formation. It's involved in motor control of visceral organs, for example, smooth muscles in the digestive tract, also consciousness and awake sleep cycle. Okay, it's called reticular activating system, part of that reticular formation. It also acts as a filter of flood of sensory input. Okay, also filters, and then some signals which are repetitive are filtered out, but the visual and strong impulses do reach consciousness. Okay, it's like a good example of that is you're attending a research conference, for example, and there are so many people in the poster area, they are talking about different things, and there's a noise going on in the poster hall, and suddenly someone calls your name. Okay, and you become aware of it. Why? Because before that, all the sensory information that your brain was getting, it was receiving, but it was filtering out. Like it's not important. The one person you're talking to, you're only listening or paying attention to that. But suddenly someone calls your name, and then you become aware of, like, somebody calls my name. Why? Because the brain was already hearing all the noise, but it was just cancelling it out. But there was some stimulus that it recognized as a familiar thing, which can be meaningful for the brain. So it took it to the conscious part of the brain. Okay, damage to this area can result in prolonged unconsciousness, which is called coma. Okay, so generally, and lastly, cerebellum. Cerebellum is this part of the brain. Now, cerebellum is usually um, cerebellum is usually um, coordination of movements. Okay, coordination. Like for example, if you are having a patient and you want to see if their cerebellum is working properly, you do a famous finger nose test. Okay, you put your finger in front of the patient and you tell them to touch the finger and touch the nose. Okay, like this, like this. So if the patient has got problem with coordination of movements, then their finger will go past nose or past finger. Okay, like this, they won't be that's the same thing that when you're crossing the road, for example, you look at a vehicle in the distance and then suddenly you can process how much speed the vehicle is coming, and if you have the time window to cross the road. Okay, so a problem with cerebellum is called dysmetria, inability to calculate distances. Okay, so if I move my finger, I calculate the distance, my cerebellum is working, but if I'm unable to do that, then it's not working. So it's an automatic pilot which is consciously comparing brain's intentions with actual body performance and projects dorsally from under the occipital lobe. Two hemispheres, outer cortex and inner white matter, provides precise timing of skeletal muscles activity and controls the balance. Okay. So much of information. I'm so sorry, but it's like one lecture and I had to cram everything, but like just so barely to understand and make concept of things. Okay, do read from the book, do read whatever you can to process all that information and familiarize yourself with all these different areas and names. Okay, thank you so much. Next we have autonomic nervous system. It's different from higher centers, but higher centers is the only one.
There is a part in the cells very complicated for all of them. This one and how it's mining contract. It is H zone and L zone and that one.
Ah, it's not from the previous lecture. We didn't discuss it. We only discussed actin and myosin filaments and how
It's
they
not
make
for
bridges.
all with us. An exam.
Well, I don't think I went into that much detail, but can you show me which one part one?
This one. Light band,
Oh.
dark band.
A little bit of it, maybe a little bit, because I think we just yeah, like we did I band, A band, and
The
then
contraction of
Yeah.
myosin and actin.
yes,
But
yes.
this H zone and L zone and that one is not for with us.
Just to understand, maybe you can study, but I don't think there will be any difficult things in the exams, because like I know it's very difficult. I know, and then we don't have time. If we are like have 4 or 5 lectures on this, or we're teaching the whole system, muscular system, then we would love to study it in details, but we didn't study it in detail.
How many lecture will include with us in the final for the physiology only?
All.
Yeah, how many? Now
The number.
10.
Like we have 10. Next is 11 is autonomic nervous system. Then we have cerebrospinal fluid, and then we have hearing and visual sensation. I think so. Like 13, 14.
Lecture
Yeah.
7.
Now it's not
Visual هذا lecture 7.
مو chapter قاعد اتكلم عن lecture
chapter 7.
like 12
Almost 12 or 13. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. Something is bothering you?
So, about the speech aid.
Yes.
يلا سريع. So, sir, there are some people that can't hear and they can't talk. So, is this also related to the